The rain had been falling since early morning. Dark clouds covered the sky, and the old wooden house at the edge of the village looked lonely and forgotten. Inside the house lived 78-year-old Grandma Helen. Her husband had passed away many years ago, and her only son, David, worked in another city. David had married a woman named Karen after his first wife died. Karen became Helen's stepdaughter-in-law. At first, Karen seemed kind and caring. She smiled often and promised David that she would look after his elderly mother. David believed her and felt relieved whenever he had to leave for work. But things slowly changed. After David left for the city, Karen became cold and impatient. She disliked taking care of Helen. She complained about cooking meals, helping with medicine, and driving her to medical appointments. "You're always asking for something," Karen would say. Helen rarely argued. She simply smiled and thanked Karen for whatever help she received. Months passed, and Helen's health became weaker. Walking was difficult, and she depended on a wheelchair. David called every week, but Helen never told him the truth. She didn't want to create problems in her son's marriage. One day, a small documentary team arrived in the village. They were filming stories about elderly people living alone in rural areas. The team was led by a young filmmaker named Mark. Mark interviewed several villagers before hearing about Helen. "That old lady has had a difficult life," one neighbor told him. Curious, Mark asked if he could meet her. When he entered Helen's home, he immediately noticed something strange. The refrigerator was almost empty. The house was cold. Medicine bottles sat unopened on a table. Helen looked thinner than she should have been. During the interview, she remained polite, but Mark sensed that she was hiding something. After filming, he quietly spoke with neighbors. What they told him shocked him. Several neighbors had seen Karen leaving Helen alone for long periods. Sometimes Helen would wait hours before receiving food or help. Mark couldn't prove anything, but he became worried. The documentary team finished filming and prepared to leave. That evening, while reviewing footage, Mark noticed something alarming. In one scene, Helen struggled to breathe. Her hands trembled, and her face looked unusually pale. A medical consultant working with the documentary team watched the footage and became concerned. "That doesn't look normal," she said. "She may need medical attention immediately." Mark decided to call Helen. There was no answer. He called again. Still nothing. A feeling of dread filled the room. Without wasting time, Mark contacted emergency services and explained the situation. The emergency operator listened carefully. Although the information came from a documentary crew, the operator took the concern seriously. An ambulance was dispatched to Helen's house. When paramedics arrived, they found Helen unconscious on the floor beside her wheelchair. Her blood pressure was dangerously low, and she was suffering from severe dehydration and other medical complications. The paramedics worked quickly. Minutes later, the ambulance raced toward the hospital through the heavy rain. Doctors later said that if help had arrived much later, the outcome could have been far worse. News of the incident spread through the village. Neighbors were shocked. David rushed home immediately after receiving the phone call. When he arrived at the hospital, he sat beside his mother's bed and held her hand. Tears filled his eyes. "I should have been here," he whispered. Helen slowly opened her eyes. Seeing her son beside her, she smiled. For the first time, she admitted that she had been struggling. David listened carefully as she described the loneliness, the neglect, and the fear she had hidden for so long. The conversation changed everything. After Helen recovered, David arranged professional care and moved her closer to where he worked. Friends and neighbors helped support the transition. Meanwhile, Mark completed the documentary. The film focused on the importance of protecting elderly people and paying attention to warning signs of neglect. When it was released online, thousands of viewers watched it. Many were moved by Helen's story. Some shared stories of their own parents and grandparents. Others volunteered at local senior care organizations. Helen eventually watched the documentary herself. She laughed when she saw the camera crew and smiled when she saw the village that had been her home for so many years. But the moment that touched her most was learning that a simple observation by a filmmaker and a careful response from an emergency operator had helped save her life. Sometimes, Helen said, a stranger notices what family cannot see. Years later, she remained grateful for the people who chose to act when something didn't seem right. Her story became a reminder that compassion, attention, and quick action can make an enormous difference in someone's life. And for Helen, that difference meant getting a second chance at life. Red Heart. The end.